Hi, Sam.
Hi, good to see you,
I'm
Josh.
glad to have you today.
Glad to be here.
I'm excited to chat with you. You're an incredible chef. Your story's enlightening from what I know. And I'm really glad to have this opportunity to kind of dig in a little bit deeper, learn a little bit more about you, and just kind of hear about how your message has not only resonated with the folks that get to hear it, but how your own message kind of like resonates within yourself. I'm excited to hear what growth has felt like for you, both personally and professionally.
Yeah, no, I was kind of reflecting last night, kind of on the way home. I'm still, just a card carrying member of the sober community, man, who cooks. And I think about like our advancements, me personally, professionally, the company, the people you can probably hear in the background, and it all just comes down to staying sober, like doing the blocking and tackling and staying sober one day at a time, whether it be Michelin or James Beard. None of that shit exists without just staying in the middle of recovery, man. And I'm sitting in my dining room at my restaurant, one of my restaurants here, and I'm looking at the table where we meet for Ben's friends every Monday morning at 11 a.m. in person, and the crowd keeps growing. The table keeps getting bigger, and that keeps me in the game. And that's the only place I want to be.
I love to hear that. How did you find your way into the kitchen? Where did that all start for you?
Easy. My grandfather was a chef. He was an immigrant, man, and came through in 27, 13-year-old boy with just some blue jeans. I came through Queens, and long story short, he loved people, he loved cooking, and he loved making money. And yeah, and so he started this. He met my grandmother, who's he's an immigrant. She's very country, like dirt floor poor country. And long story short, they opened a restaurant in 1956 in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is my hometown. And it was the very first Italian restaurant in Myrtle Beach, which is wild because there's hundreds, if not thousands of them now. But they lived on the second floor and ran the restaurant on the first floor. It was actually an old bed and breakfast building, which is such a cool, like, I think, salt of the earth hospitality story, so I'm honored to be a part of that. But we all grew up in the neighborhood kind of behind the restaurant. And so my day would look like I went to school and I was always in athletics. So I would go to practice, whatever sport I was playing. And then I would come home and I would want to see my parents. My mom ran the front and my dad ran the back. Honestly, all of us were in the restaurant, but like that, yeah, I wanted to see my parents, my dad. And so I'd ride my bike, slam it down and come barging in the back door. And I would enter in this cool, like super, it's just a young kid, a young boy, man, like this super intoxicating environment, loud rock and roll. Rod Stewart, like 70s, man. Rod Stewart, the Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, I didn't know anything about cooking, but I felt this spirit of collaboration and I was hooked, man, from the very, very beginning. Humble beginnings, though. I was a dishwasher and then I was a busboy. And then eventually, when I was tall enough, my dad would let me work a station, you know. So that's where it all began.
That's amazing. And I think it's one thing to kind of like be enamored by it at that age. But as you grow a little, you become your own person. Sometimes you can kind of like have that moment where you're like, I don't want to do the family business. Like as much as I like to look at it, it's not something that I want to be a part of. What was it that kept you in it? Because it could have easily been something to turn from. Was it that same passion from the beginning that kept you in, or was it kind of the result of creativity? Was it the want for leadership? Any of those things?
Well, it's interesting. I'm one of five. I have four sisters, and I'm the only one in hospitality. So to your point, yeah, man, they all got out. One actually would rather go to med school for like 8 years at Duke, and rather than punish herself by continuing a professional career in hospitality. But yeah, I see it all the time. For me, no, I mean, I look, I was kind of a surfer, skater, like not a whole lot going on, hated school. Like I was that guy. And working for my parents was like, it wasn't optional. So, I say all that to say that's where I fell in love with hospitality. When I graduated high school, um, this is one thing I always credit my father for. He made this like very dad move. And he wasn't like a dad kind of dad, but he was like, I made a call and you're going to culinary school. And I was like, what? I didn't even apply to any colleges. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't on my agenda. And I didn't know, I really had no clear path forward, but food saved my life, man. He sent me to culinary school and then he like made a call and sent me to like I have to take us back a little bit because everybody knew everybody in my hometown. It was small at the time. So he just called a guy and was like, do something with this kid. And so he sent me to this restaurant called it was inside a hotel called the Sea Island Inn, and the chef was Mike McKinnon, and the owners were long time like Myrtle Beach residents and business people that kind of came up with my family and do something with this kid. And so I fell in love with hospitality work for my parents. Like I love collaboration and just like I thought it was just a cool place to be. And when I went to this other place, it's really when I fell in love with cooking. There were a lot of like old black cooks, man, who were like, took me under their wing. I would follow them around, but they would take me under their wing and teach me about strawberries in the summertime, peaches in the summertime, collard greens in the wintertime. And there we also made like sauces from scratch. We baked. Mike was classically trained. He had an incredible touch. And I was just hooked, man, hooked on cooking. Hospitality, step one, cooking, step two, and off I went.
That's amazing.
Mhm.
Did your skater, surfer, street urchin persona follow you through kitchens for a while?
Yes, oddly enough, hair down to my hips. Yeah, I mean, it was always like cooking still to this day is very punk rock. It's very rock and roll. When I think about food, I think about it probably like a musician thinks about music that he writes. Harmony, are there too many notes? That's a thing too. Does it need something? So a lot of what I learned early, just in that environment, in that atmosphere, I still hold onto pretty tightly. And when it comes down to like surfing and skating, a lot of the feelings I get, because a lot of what I do is by feel. A lot of the feelings I get, are and I think important feelings to feel, whether it be peace, serenity, because this life is so chaotic and busy and days are long. I work every day, but whenever I'm out in the water or if I'm snowboarding, there's this sense of serenity, that's really, really important for me to kind of fill my cup up, not only physically, spiritually, but also mentally, and so I become a better cook and a better chef, a better business owner, hopefully a better friend, a better partner to my fiance and a better dad to my children, and a better friend to my friends that way.
Where did the drinking lifestyle fit in all of this?
Yeah. Well, the rest, same kitchens I grew up in, man, were the same kitchens that I learned to drink and use drugs in, and including my parents. And anytime I do an interview or say something like that, I always want to just make sure that I qualify this saying it wasn't like it was a drug den or everybody was boozing. It was just what we did. It was just normal. It was just, Coors Light, a headband, an apron, and strap in, on a Friday night and get a cooler of beer in the a walk-in cooler. And that was it. So I just equated cooking and drinking beers. And after we would get done with the big rush, there was a joint to smoke. And eventually that obviously snowballed to harder drugs and deeper into addiction. So anyways, that's where it began. But addiction runs deep on both sides of my family. My mom drank herself to death. God bless her. She died she had COVID. She died in 20, we found her and deceased. And her dad died in alcoholic death. Brother died in alcoholic death. I just lost my uncle last last autumn. He's like the first person to ever like, um, he like tossed a pain pill my way when I was a kid. You know what I mean? Like, so it was just it was it's part of my life, man. And so anyway, so that was like where it all began. And I feel like I know for a fact I'm bodily different than a normal man or woman. Whenever I consume alcohol or drugs, I react differently, and I have a resume to back that statement up. A- And so, anyways, that's where it all began. I chased it for a long, long time. But I'm proud to say, as I sit here in my restaurant, we just touched on the fact that like Restaurant Constance and Your Farms Your Table, the company that I own, is big part of kind of like what you're doing. It's like changing the conversation in food and beverage. I love what I do. I couldn't do anything else, man, other than like steal surfboards or like, what I mean, be bum out on the beach. And so I want to do what I love to do and I want to do it, sustainably and I want to do it, with my health in mind. And so that's what we set out to do. And that's what we continue to do.
I think, conversations with restaurant folks is so important to me because I lived that lifestyle. And it really resonates with me. You kind of like talking about how commonplace it is around you. And I know now there's like really great spots, including your own, that are looking to make that change and just kind of like change the culture. But there's still a lot that are stuck in it. And I want to hear from you, like, if it's so commonplace, what were the signs for you that it was time to change? How do you break out of that if every day starts to feel the same?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, look, I went to my first AA meeting at like 15, 16. I was that guy. So the signs, the red flags were out there early. There's a whole lot to unpack there, but essentially, I think the Cliff Notes version of this is like I was convinced I was gonna do things my way, and so that was even my approach to sobriety. I knew early on that I was different. I drank differently. I did drugs differently. However, the consequences um, didn't really show up. They would show up incrementally. I lived this cycle of like do really well and everything fall everything alcohol and drugs catch up with me and everything fall apart and then start over again. And I did that for about 2 decades. At the end of 2013, it just got bad, man. Hadn't been working. I walked out of my family. I wound up homeless, actually not too far from this restaurant here. And so there's a crazy element to that portion, that season of my life where, whenever I was out there on the streets, I was actually like, I was finally able to drink and use like I wanted to drink and use, and nobody would bother me, not my kids, not my wife, not my workplace, not my passions. And it's a real wild place to be. And I remember just thinking about that dynamic and how strange my life, you know what I mean? Like it was just like it was very scary. And I got out of there, Josh, not because I thought I could get sober or I was even a candidate for sobriety or happiness or joy or any of that stuff. I got out of there because I didn't want to die and I was in a real bad spot for a lot of different reasons. And so anyway, so I went to treatment in 2014, in the fall of 2014. And I went there convinced that I was going to be locked up in like some sort of psych ward or treatment center for the rest of my life. I was convinced I was different, born on the wrong planet, like all the things that we sometimes think about ourselves when we're spiraling and in a really bad place. But luckily, man, I had people in my life who were, who were there to prop me up, tell me the truth, man, the cold hard truth. And I was also at that point in my life where I was like, they say pain is the cover charge of change, right? And so I hurt bad enough to be like, you know what? Let's just try something different. It's probably not going to work for me, but I'm gonna try this thing anyway. This 12 and 12 that I see up on the wall, everybody's talking about. And so I gave it a shot, and I put all my chips into the center of the table and said, all right, man, I don't have another chance. I don't have another drink in me. I don't have another drug in me. We've already seen what the research has already been done. And so anyway, so that was it. And the rest is history. And what I learned was that, throughout my life, I would always entertain the idea of getting sober, but I would never entertain the idea of making sobriety my priority. And so, and again, that comes down to like personal arrogance or this independent kind of punk rock attitude that I had that I was kind of conditioned to as a kid, which is a whole nother podcast right there. But nevertheless, it was the tool set that I had that I was working with. And so it was always, cooking, kids, wife, and then maybe a couple meetings a week, and where that got me was, in that cycle that I was referring to earlier, the journey that I set out on in the fall of 2014. I put sobriety here and everything else, no matter what it looked like. And bro, I didn't even know I'd be cooking. I honestly thought that I'd be selling insurance, you know what I mean, and playing golf all weekend. But sobriety was going to be number one because it's my only way out. And the rest is history. And what's cool about that program that I was at is that while I was there, I had to have a job. And so, they kind of place, sometimes they place you, sometimes they put you on the street to go fill out applications. And so they put me in this really, really dingy calzone pizza type place and shorts, no chef coats, no none of that. And I'm a CIA grad. I'd worked in Manhattan. I'd worked in some great restaurants and even out of the country. And so anyway, so it was exactly what I needed when I needed it. Our greater than myself kind of took care of the rest. And here I am, 11 and a half years sober and sitting in my dining room of a restaurant. That wasn't even on my dreams list, bro.
That's so compelling. I mean, even just think about, the climb from bottom, from nothing. Seems to me, it sounded like, you went from not wanting to die to finally wanting to live.
Mhm.
And that just really, I don't know, man, it's just really hitting me right now because I feel like a lot of the people that I talk to, they worry about that kind of like impossible feeling of how do I come back from this? And it's not even how do I come back to this to, the person that you see now. It's like right now. I mean, like in this afternoon, like how do I start from this? Who started to blossom from that change? How do you go from born on the wrong planet to feeling a spark for life? How do you follow that light?
Yeah, man. Well, I think that life is a we program, and that's not just for people in sobriety, man. I think that everybody I'm looking at my kitchen staff in there. I see people collaborating, working together, like enjoying themselves. And I'll walk out the door and go to another property and I will see the same thing. I believe that we really need each other, to navigate this crazy shit that's out those doors. But to answer your question is, when I really doubted myself, but I was giving it a shot anyway, I was surrounded by people who were just as crazy as I was. And I saw people just smiling, man. You know what I mean? I saw my friend Carolyn. It was a co-ed the kind of thing that I went to. My friend, I had so much respect for everybody, but I saw my friend Carolyn, who had been to hell and back. And I saw her smiling and starting to change. And, and several other people. And I remember just thinking to myself, well, man, if they can do it, fuck, man, why can't I? And so the door that cracks open like that suddenly opens up like that. Next thing you know, it swung wide open, man. And then I had my forever sponsor, Dennis Wormsley, the Worm. He was one of the leaders at the treatment center down there. And I hated this dude. I mean, I hated this guy. But somehow, some way, man, we crossed paths one night. We sat down and he knew I was struggling. I was hurting. I just walked out on a family. I you know what I mean? I was licking my wounds from a couple decades of just debauchery. And he told me a story, man. And it's just like in the literature that we sometimes read. He just told me a story. And I'm sitting across from somebody who doesn't look anything like me, completely different background in so many different ways. But I heard my life. I heard my story coming out of somebody else's mouth. And right then and there, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm following this guy. And again, man, like that's my sponsor for life. He's a state away, living and thriving, but I will forever be indebted for that moment, because everything changed soon after that interaction. It's a we program.
Do you feel like you hold your old self to the fire, or do you feel like you hold his hand into the life you have now?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. I think it's healthy. I think it's healthy to think about both. Interesting, recovery is like one of those things where it's almost, you know, there's these different chapters that you experience, in sobriety. And some of these chapters even include complacency, and I've done sobriety wrong enough times to know the signals when I see them. And so I think it's important to sometimes drift back into like what it was like. But I'm also one of those people that will say on the other side of my mouth, I'm like, dude, moving forward is the only way to live, And so while I don't dwell on what happened, I think it's good to use as a reference point to compel myself and maybe others to be reminded consistently how important it is to stay in the middle of recovery, whatever that looks like. For me, it's a 12-step recovery. I have a huge fellowship here with Ben's friends. Not everybody is in 12-step recovery. There's 100 different ways of getting sober, but whatever works for you, whatever speaks to you, stay in the middle of it, man. Nobody ever makes it on the fence, man. The fence owns the attic. That's for sure. And so anyway, so yeah, man. Yeah, it's important, I think, to kind of take care of and pay attention to both ends of the spectrum.
Is it important for you to share your story instead of just keeping it as something that's behind you?
Honestly, man, I didn't think that, it really goes back to the beginning. I thought that I was the only person on the planet doing what I was doing, feeling the way I was feeling. Like the real causes and conditions, the shame and the turmoil and the childhood trauma. I think it's important. And so people were there for me and shared their struggles and what they went through. And so I think it's really, really important to carry on that tradition and be there for other people the way people were there for me. And I think it's also important to acknowledge, like a lot of people just see, even now, they just see sober guy, restaurant, you know what I mean? Or restaurant empire success. They might not know the whole story. So I think it's important to keep it out there. And so, that I think people are just educated really for one thing, but I also know for a fact that like, and I can speak from experience, man, is like there are people that are paying attention to us. And it's not just me, man. It's it's you, it's a lot of people that are thinking about getting sober, that have thought about it, but maybe they felt like I felt back in the day where I didn't think I was a candidate. So what's the fucking point? You know what I mean? But maybe they hear something that they can hold on to that speaks to them, that they can relate to, and might get them in the door of a meeting or have them pick up a phone and call somebody to talk them through whatever it is they're going through.
It's great. I'd love to hear from you what happens in a kitchen when leadership is clear headed. What does a sober chef do for restaurant culture, for back of house?
Yeah. Well, it's funny, man. That's been a process for me too, and you know, I I started from the bottom whenever I call it my reentry. and I was out of the game for years, man. And so I had to learn how to hold a knife again and saute and um the muscle memory, how to feel if a steak was medium rare. I had to kind of like I had to start over again, and it was a really humbling experience. And that does something to you, it's really grounding. That being said, on our journeys, I think it's not uncommon for us to have to kind of find our voice, because we're not the same person. We're not the same person that we were prior to sobriety, and then, you know, take that person and put them in a kitchen environment where everything's super competitive and, I operate, in spaces where details are important. And so it's really, really, it takes a little while. And so a lot of grace is required, a lot of guidance is required, and a lot of mentorship. And I'm grateful for the people that really propped me up, and told me whenever I stepped out of line and rewarded me when I didn't, and I could talk to people the way I wanted to be spoken to. With this business that I now started in my apartment in the pandemic, and there was never any, which is really cool. It's kind of a story about sobriety. The business is a story of sobriety, but whenever it began to look like so to kind of start beginning, it was just like a farm to table meal delivery service I was doing out of my apartment because I was too arrogant to go to unemployment. You know what I mean? We're like, whatever. So I did what I did, and it took off. The community supported me. Next thing I know, I don't have to go back to my old job. I'm starting this new thing. Ton of fear, imposter syndrome. A lot, like, went through all of that. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough to own my own business? Because I didn't think I was. We start there, and sobriety carried me through all that stuff, all those conversations. But whenever it began to look like a business, I promised myself it would look direct, almost exactly the opposite of what I came up in. And that begins with how we pay people well above livable wage. Let's not even talk about livable wage anymore. We want to create careers, not jobs. How we speak to people, we speak to each other, not at each other, and how we approach what we call like human moments. We're all human beings. I'm going to make enough mistakes by noon, right? As an owner, much less a line cook who may or may not have glazed a piece of fish correctly. So let's address how we're going to have a supportive, interactive moment whenever these challenges arise, And so I make a point to we always start with what went really, really well. And we follow that up with, okay, cool. What can we work on? Where did this kind of fall apart? We just trace our steps back, and really what I've learned, and we're getting results, and I've learned so much, is like whoever we're talking to feels seen, they feel heard, they feel supported, and we're all learning, and we become a better whole, um, through that process, than any process I've ever known before. And I'll be 50 this year, so I came up in the 90s and French kitchens, Frenchies yelling at, I mean, like just throwing shit, like yelling at us, and so anyway, so that's where I came from. This is what we're doing now, but the culture here wouldn't exist without the lessons I learned, on the road to recovery.
That's amazing. It sounds like,
Thank you.
both in life and career, a lot of your story comes from breaking old patterns.
Oh man, yeah, dude, big time, big time. And the fact that like, I don't take for granted at all the fact that I still get to do what I love to do, man. And I touched on this earlier. It was whenever I got sober, the people at the treatment center were like, dude, you can't cook. You know what I mean? You got to figure something out. And what was shown to me, and this is another cool element of recovery that I really wasn't sure I could subscribe to, is like I am a part, like, how can I say this, man? Like somebody else is at the wheel. You know what I mean? All I have to do is the next right thing, put my best effort forward, be honest, be intentional, and the rest will take care of itself. That's I guess whenever that concept first crossed my path, it sounded like a foreign language. But now, like 11 years later, I can't imagine living any differently. And what it's created is existence where my life and recovery are one and the same. But just, you know what I mean? So it's not. I just live. You know what I mean? Like, this is just how I exist and how I live, and I love it that way. Coming up, man, it was always like you had your meeting days, your recovery days, and then you would go home and be with your family, and then you would have your work days and then your work meetings. But now it's just, they're all just one and the same: live, sleep, and to eat, recovery, and cooking.
What became possible for you in sobriety, both
The idea
professionally
that
and
anything's
personally?
possible. Yeah, the idea that anything's possible, anything and everything's on the table, man. I just continuously, am blown away and, you know, sometimes I'll have those, like, those I call them, like, red light moments where, I don't where do you live? Where do you live?
I'm in
You in
Columbus,
Austin?
Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio? Okay, I don't know why I was thinking Austin. Anyway, I drive anywhere here. I don't know if you're on, like, mass transportation or not, but, like, I drive everywhere, so I'll be at a red light, and I'll look over. Charlotte's, like, a big banking community, so there's a lot of, like, blue shirts, and I'll look over, and I'll just see somebody that's, like, just looks so unhappy. You know what I mean? And not that I want that for anyone, but I'll have those red light moments where I'm like, "Dude, I am sober. I woke up today and I didn't think about a drug or a drink." You know what I mean? And that's like a huge, huge victory, you know, and then there'll be other moments where I'll have to put, you know, like I'll take my, my chef hat off and put my business hat on and, um, enter in a, you know, like a very heavy like business negotiation or conversation or something like that. And I promise you, 10 years ago, if you would have asked me if I were even eligible to walk in those doors, I would laugh. I would laugh at that, you know. But you know, they say recovery does for you what you can't do for yourself, and I just love that about life.
How do you fill your time outside of the restaurant?
Oh, man, I love to travel, and my children are 22 and 18, and they're at a great age. My daughter's about to graduate, and so I love being a dependable parent. You know what I mean? Like um, God, I could cry just saying that. I wasn't that person when they were little. You know what I mean? And to be that person where you know whether it's tuition or life after graduation, you know, I get to be there for them, and so that consumes a lot of my time. Which I feel so grateful to be able to do, to be able to be that person for them. Um, And then, you know, just personally, you know, I love pit bulls. I have 2 rescue pit bulls, and so it's always something with the dogs, whether we're hiking, you know, or hanging out in the yard. We have like a little mini farm behind the house where I live, my fiance and I. Yeah, man, like my life's full, dude. It's great.
How does your family talk about you?
God. Well, you know, it's interesting. I have 4 sisters. We're all in recovery and nobody died, which is pretty miraculous, you know, and so we all love each other and respect each other, but we've all grew up in like different chapters of our family's existence. You know what I mean? And so we all give each other enough respect and space to allow ourselves to live our lives, you know, without any expectations. And so I would think we all respect each other. So I guess I would start there. You know, I know my children, I have this cool, like rather unconventional relationship with them where we're more friends than I am a dad. And so there's a level of respect there and admiration that I have for them. And I'm pretty sure they would say the same for me. And my fiance, you know, she's an individual that, you know, is beautiful in so many ways, so intelligent, so giving, so selfless, and also just so beautiful. We have a great relationship. We've come a long way in 3 years. And I think that she would say a lot of the same things I'm saying about her, about me.
That's awesome. When we first started talking, you were talking about looking at the table where you have the Ben's friends meeting. How long have you been doing that?
Dude, so check this out. I was like 4 years sober and, 3 and a half or 4 years sober, something like that. And I went to I live in Charlotte. I got to Charlotte in 2004. Shit hit the fan of 14. I went to rehab in Sumter, South Carolina, and I wound up staying there for really until kind of God drew me back here. But I just landed back in like 17 or 18, and I saw it on Facebook. And I was like, whatever, I don't know what this is, but this looks pretty cool. And I'm still cooking. You know what I mean? I would love to be able to do this and give back. I thought it was a way of giving back. And so I started, we laugh all the time because it's either 2018 or 2019, and we've done this. This is like the 4th location that we've held meetings at, but been doing it since then. And what's cool about Ben's friends is not only the backstory, but the people who started it. You know, just again, man, just like 2 people who you know have found sobriety when Steve and Mickey down in Charleston. I think you know them. Um, guy got sober when it wasn't cool to get sober, assuming that it is now. You know, found success in hospitality and wanted to get back, obviously in the memory of their friend Ben. But yeah, I mean, I thought I would do it and it'd be a cool way for me to give back. And little did I know, it would nourish me in so many ways that I didn't know I needed. Continues to nourish me. I hear so many different because it's not AA. I'm an AA. I'm a 12 stepper, man. Because it's not AA. It's just we're just a fellowship of people, you know, want to get sober, stay sober, and do what we love to do. And so I hear so many different nuggets of truth and hope and strength that I get to hold on to and apply to my personal program and my outlook on recovery. And so anyway, so it has been, I've had so many breakthrough moments and Ben's friends, man, uh, too many to count. But yeah, man. So we started in 2018, 2019. We're here now. We had like 17 people at the meeting on Monday in person, which is huge to do it. Still get that, the numbers this many years later, and we're growing. And I just think it's incredible, man. It's incredible. Hospitality needs it.
That's amazing. What do those conversations sound like?
Well, this week we have, honestly, bro, it's like, it's really powerful. We have people that are, that 3 days sober, you know, just got a DUI. There's a mixologist who got a DUI. There's a chef at an eponymous restaurant here in the city who's walking in with one of his line cooks, but the chef is also in recovery. So anyway, so there's all of these layers of newness, vulnerability, a whole lot of like just transparent pain, but also hope. And so the meetings, some days there's just not a dry eye in the house, and I think that's incredibly powerful. We're not supposed to cry in the kitchen, man. You know what I mean? This isn't the business for that, but now it is, and I love that. And I think that creates a more sustainable future for all of us.
How are you there for folks new to sobriety? I ask that because sometimes I'm going to be 9 years sober in October, and a lot of the people that meet me didn't know me the way that I was before. So they're kind of like all I know. And I've had some conversations with people where they're like, sometimes you meet somebody who's so far into sobriety that their life seems impossible. How do you stay there for somebody and kind of convince them in those moments where, in early sobriety, it feels like you're the only person that this has ever happened to. And what we were talking about a little bit earlier about how it starts with one day. How do you sit with them and can kind of convince them that the light will grow brighter if you stick with it, if
Yeah,
you
I
look
love that question,
impossible?
man. It's such an important conversation to have. It's like, yeah, dude, like, because first of all, we'll start with because I felt the same way. Where I walked in, the guy I was telling you about, my friend Dennis, sober 30 years, like, what? I'm just trying to figure out right here, right now, you know, and try not to fall apart. First things first is, if you walk into a Ben's friends meeting or reach out, you're not going to get only me. You're going to get, we have an army. We call it an army, and we're gonna put you on a text thread, and so you're going to be exposed to a whole lot of people who are here for each other, and they have one goal in mind, and that is to live life one day at a time and do it together. And so that's kind of where we start, and then from a conversation standpoint, I love the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and because there's so many rich nuggets in there that obviously that book was written in 38, published in 39, but really it just comes down to one alcoholic telling his story to another alcoholic, and not all the war stories, but essentially just situations or elements of your story, your journey that are relatable. To be there for somebody, you have to create relatable experiences. So I think it's important about that. Whenever I'm in the meetings, make sure that whatever we talk about, there is an element, of our talking points or objectives for that day that speaks to the newcomer. And sometimes that shows up in like vulnerability here, and creating open channels of dialogue, that can continue, whether it's after the meeting or whether it's for coffee later on or so on and so forth. I think really it's important to have a network. I have a sponsee, I have a sponsor, I have a sponsee. That sponsee is soon going to have another sponsee. And so we have this big branch, you know what I mean? Of love, of sober love, where it's like you might be able to evade me, but you can't get by Paul, and Marty's right here too. And Marty's going to scoop you up too. We're going to take you out for coffee, and so anyway, so we attack it a couple different ways, but really it just comes down to, it really just begins and ends with just showing up consistently, just showing up consistently for yourself and for others.
I love that. It's kind of wild to hear your life now. I think about the line cook having a busy service and unwinding with something to drink afterward because it's so stressful and it's a lot. But you are sober and probably the busiest you've ever been in your entire life. How do you deal with chaos and stress now?
I've been focused on that for probably the past year and a half, and really what kind of where I'm at personally. I'll be 50 this year. I feel like I'm in the best health of my life. I don't even remember what it was like when I was 29, turning 30, 20 years ago. But I have a feeling like I'm in better shape now. I think about my central nervous system, and because that's our body's command center. That regulates our anxiety. It affects our influences, our behaviors. Our behaviors become our habits. And so really, so that's where I'm at. Like, so I have a pretty clear understanding of what works for me and what doesn't work for me. And I have a real clear understanding of what I need to do day in and day out to take care of myself, and being busy isn't an excuse to neglect yourself physically, mentally, or spiritually. And so I hold close to that. And again, bro, I know that because I did it wrong, and I think that's important to acknowledge. I know most of what I know now, whether it's in the kitchen or in rooms of recovery, because I made mistakes, but what I am intent on is learning from my mistakes so I don't repeat them. Do my best not to repeat them. And so I have a trainer, man. I love yoga. I love reading is very important to me. Like having that time where I can just put the phone down, get away from everything, and so there's a couple of different outlets that help me regulate my nervous system. And so that, that can show up one day at a time for myself and my team.
What do you love about yourself?
I don't give up, and living a life that wasn't even on my dreams list, and what recovery has proven for me is that, and I did again, man, like I used to hide behind drugs and alcohol because I was so full of fear, but I could do hard things, whether it's on the cutting board or in the boardroom. If I don't know it, I operate with enough humility to ask for help or figure out on my own. And so that's a really, as a business person, who's responsible for a lot of people, we have 80 employees, man. So I have 80 people that I'm responsible for. I think that's really important to acknowledge and to hold on to and to nourish, to get better at.
And thanks for the time.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Thanks, Josh.